Sophia's eyes fluttered open to the gentle glow of morning light creeping through her bedroom curtains. Her heart pounded against her chest, a tangled mess of excitement and nerves. Today was supposed to be the beginning of her forever. The day she would walk down the aisle, wrapped in the beauty of a pure white dress, flowers woven delicately through her hair, and the sound of music guiding her toward the man she was meant to spend the rest of her life with. Daniel. He was everything anyone could ever want. Handsome, successful, and wealthy beyond measure. His smile could charm an entire room, and his presence commanded attention effortlessly. Their relationship had been the envy of many. Sophia had felt like the luckiest woman in the world when he proposed to her under the dazzling city lights of Paris, presenting her with a diamond ring that sparkled like a promise. Yet, as she sat at her vanity, staring at her reflection, there was an unease she couldn't shake. Something deep within her whispered that she was trying too hard to convince herself she was happy, that the life she was stepping into was one built on expectations rather than love. Daniel was good to her, but his affection was often overshadowed by his arrogance. The way he treated people who couldn't offer him anything of value left a sour taste in her mouth. But love wasn't always perfect, right? That's what everyone said. She had told herself over and over again that Daniel's shortcomings were things she could live with. He was ambitious, driven, and powerful. And if he sometimes acted like the world revolved around him, well, didn't he have the right? He had earned his place at the top. Her hands trembled slightly as she fastened the necklace her late mother had left her. A simple silver chain with a tiny sapphire pendant. It was the only piece of jewelry she truly cherished. It was her mother's reminder that life was about kindness, love, and humility. Sophia closed her eyes and breathed in deeply, wishing her mother was still around to guide her through this moment. The ceremony was to take place at a grand cathedral, its high arches and stained glass windows radiating elegance. Sophia arrived in a luxurious limousine, her father beside her, his proud smile barely hiding the concern in his eyes. "You look beautiful, sweetheart," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "Just like your mother on her wedding day." "Thanks, Dad," Sophia replied softly, her fingers squeezing his hand. They walked down the aisle together, her arm entwined with his. The guests rose from their seats, all eyes on her. Murmurs of admiration drifted through the air, but Sophia barely noticed. Her gaze was fixed on Daniel, standing at the altar with an expression of cool impatience. He looked impeccable in his tailored suit, his dark hair perfectly styled, his posture rigid with authority. But his eyes lacked warmth. Sophia's heart faltered, but she continued her slow, measured steps. The priest began to speak, his voice echoing through the quiet sanctuary. But before he could proceed with the ceremony, Daniel raised a hand, his expression one of utter resolve. "I can't do this," Daniel said, his voice clear and firm. His words shattered the silence, rippling through the crowd like a vicious storm. Sophia's breath caught in her throat. She couldn't move, couldn't think. "What? What do you mean?" she stammered, her voice trembling with disbelief. "I'm sorry, Sophia," Daniel continued, his gaze unwavering. "I've been trying to convince myself that this is what I want, but it's not. You deserve someone who can love you the way you deserve to be loved. And I just can't give you that." His words were like knives slicing through her chest. The room blurred around her as gasps and whispers erupted from the guests. Her father's grip on her arm tightened, as if trying to keep her from crumbling to the ground. But it was too late. The devastation was complete. Daniel turned and walked away, his footsteps echoing against the marble floor. The sound grew fainter and fainter, until all that remained was the pounding of Sophia's broken heart. The murmurs grew louder, waves of pity and judgment crashing around her. Tears stung her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. Not there. Not in front of all those people. Her father whispered something she couldn't hear, his voice lost in the chaos of her own thoughts. She released his arm and turned away, her feet moving before her mind could catch up. She stumbled out of the cathedral, away from the stares and whispers, away from the life she thought she was supposed to have. The cold air slapped her cheeks as she burst through the doors, her heels clicking against the cobblestone walkway. She didn't stop running until she reached the garden of the luxury hotel where the reception was meant to take place, a place now rendered meaningless. Sophia collapsed onto a stone bench, her delicate dress bunching awkwardly around her. Her chest heaved as she struggled to catch her breath, the pain twisting inside her like a vice. How could he do this to her? After everything they had planned, everything they had dreamed of. No, everything she had dreamed of. Hadn't she sensed his hesitation before? Ignored the red flags because she was too wrapped up in the idea of a perfect life. The truth was harsh and unforgiving. She had built her world around an illusion, clinging to the belief that Daniel's wealth and charm were enough to make her happy. But none of it had been real. And now she was left with nothing but a shattered heart and a future she could no longer see. "Are you all right?" The voice was gentle, low, and filled with genuine concern. Sophia looked up, her blurry vision slowly clearing to reveal a man standing before her. He wore a simple waiter's uniform, a white shirt tucked neatly into black trousers. His hair was slightly tousled, and his eyes were kind, radiating the warmth she had craved all morning. I'm fine," she managed to choke out, though her tear-streaked face told a different story. The man hesitated for a moment before sitting beside her, his presence oddly comforting. "You don't look fine." She let out a bitter laugh, a sound devoid of any real humor. What gave it away? The dress. The tears. The way you're gripping that bench like it's the only thing holding you together. Sophia glanced down at her trembling hands. She hadn't even noticed how tightly she was clenching the cold stone. "Here," he said, handing her a glass of water he must have brought from the reception hall. "Drink this. It might help." She accepted the glass, her fingers brushing against his. For a moment, the world felt a little less heavy. The man's kindness was unexpected, but it was what she needed more than anything. "Thanks," she whispered before taking a sip. "I'm Ethan, by the way." "Sophia." "Nice to meet you, Sophia, even if the circumstances aren't exactly ideal." His attempt at lightening the mood coaxed a small smile from her. It wasn't much, but it was something. And in that moment, she realized she wasn't entirely alone. Sophia sat on the stone bench, her hands wrapped tightly around the glass of water Ethan had handed her. Its coolness seeped into her fingers, grounding her in a reality she desperately wanted to escape. Her chest still ached from Daniel's words, their brutal finality echoing in her mind like a cruel taunt. She felt small, exposed, and foolish for ever believing in a love that had been nothing more than a mirage. Ethan remained seated beside her, his presence calm and unintrusive. He didn't pepper her with questions or offer meaningless reassurances. Instead, he simply sat there, allowing her the space to process her pain. Somehow, that made her feel more comforted than anything else. "Why are you being so nice to me?" Sophia finally asked, her voice strained and raw. Ethan tilted his head slightly, a faint smile tugging at the corners of his lips. "Because it looks like you needed someone to be nice to you, and I happened to be here." Sophia searched his face, trying to find any trace of pity or judgment. But all she saw was genuine kindness, something she hadn't experienced in far too long. "I just made a complete fool of myself in front of everyone," she admitted, her shoulders slumping. "The man I was supposed to marry just walked away, like I meant nothing." "That sounds awful," Ethan said, his tone gentle but not patronizing. "I'm sorry you had to go through that." His words carried sincerity, not the empty sympathy she would have expected from a stranger. The kind of sincerity that didn't try to minimize her pain or rush her into feeling better. "Thanks," Sophia murmured, her fingers tracing the rim of the glass. "You must think I'm pathetic, sitting here in a wedding dress, sobbing like a child." "No, I think you're human," Ethan replied. "And I think anyone who went through what you just did would be hurting." A silence stretched between them, but it was a comfortable one. Sophia's breathing began to steady her tears slowly drying against her cheeks. She glanced at Ethan again, noticing the weariness in his eyes despite the kindness they held. "Are you a waiter here?" she asked, trying to redirect her thoughts to anything but her own misery. "Sort of," Ethan said with a shrug. "I do a bit of everything around here. Setting up events, serving drinks, sometimes even helping with maintenance if they're short-staffed." "Sounds like a lot of work." "It keeps me busy," he replied simply. "And honestly, I kind of enjoy it. You meet all kinds of people." "People like me, you mean?" Sophia's voice was bitter, but Ethan didn't flinch. "People like you," he agreed, his tone steady. "People who are just trying to figure out their place in the world." Sophia let out a shaky breath. His words hit a little too close to home. For the past year, she had been so consumed with planning a perfect wedding and chasing a perfect life that she had lost sight of herself entirely. Who was she without Daniel? Without the illusion of a love that had never truly existed? "I spent so much time convincing myself that marrying Daniel was what I wanted," Sophia confessed, her voice barely above a whisper. "He was everything I thought I needed. Wealthy, successful, good-looking. Everything the world tells you is important. But I think, deep down, I always knew something was missing." "What was missing?" Ethan asked, his gaze unwavering. "I don't know. Something real. Something that wasn't about status or appearances. I wanted someone who cared about me, not just the idea of me. But I ignored all of that because I was so desperate to make it work." "It's hard to let go of something you've invested so much of yourself in," Ethan said, "even when you know it's not right." "Yeah," Sophia replied, her voice cracking. "But what do you do when everything you've built just falls apart?" "You rebuild," Ethan said softly. "Maybe not right away. Maybe not in the way you expected. But eventually, you find a way to move forward." Sophia stared at him, her chest tightening with a mixture of gratitude and longing. He made it sound so simple, but her shattered heart couldn't grasp the concept of rebuilding. "Not yet. I don't even know where to start," she admitted, her hands clutching her dress as if it were her last connection to stability. "Maybe you start by letting yourself feel what you're feeling," Ethan suggested. "It's okay to be hurt. It's okay to be angry. And it's okay to not have all the answers right now." Sophia's eyes welled up with tears again, but this time, they didn't feel like a burden. They felt like release, the kind of release she had been denying herself for far too long. "I guess you're right," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I've been trying so hard to hold everything together, to make everything look perfect. But it's not perfect. None of it is." Ethan offered her a reassuring smile. "Perfection's overrated anyway. It's the messy parts of life that end up meaning the most." A hesitant smile tugged at her lips. It wasn't much, but it was more than she had managed all morning. "Why are you being so kind to me?" she asked again, her curiosity outweighing her embarrassment. "Maybe because I know what it's like to feel lost," Ethan replied, his gaze distant for a moment. "And maybe because everyone deserves a little kindness when they're at their lowest." There was something about his words that stirred something deep within her. Sophia wasn't sure what it was, but she found herself wanting to know more about this man who had appeared out of nowhere to offer her compassion without asking for anything in return. "I should probably get going," Sophia said eventually, her voice reluctant. "My father's probably worried sick about me." "Do you want me to walk you back?" Ethan offered. Sophia shook her head, but her fingers twitched slightly. "No, I think I need to face everyone on my own. But thank you. For everything." "You're welcome," Ethan said. "And for what it's worth, you're stronger than you think. Whatever happens next, you'll get through it." Sophia met his gaze, and for the first time since her world had shattered, she felt a flicker of hope. Ethan's words resonated within her, like seeds planted in soil she hadn't even realized was fertile. With one last glance at him, she stood up, her legs trembling but determined. She took a deep breath and began walking back toward the hotel, her wedding dress trailing behind her like the tattered remnants of a broken dream. Sophia walked away from the garden, her steps unsteady as if the earth beneath her had suddenly become foreign and unyielding. The hotel loomed ahead, its grandeur now nothing but a hollow shell meant to house a celebration that would never take place. People were waiting inside, family, friends, acquaintances, all of them eager to feast, dance, and toast to a future that had crumbled before it even began. The lobby was abuzz with murmurs and restless figures shifting from foot to foot. As soon as Sophia stepped inside, the conversations died, and all eyes turned to her. Her father rushed forward, his face pale with worry, arms opening to embrace her. "Sophia, are you all right? Where did you go?" His words came out in a flurry of panic, his voice trembling with concern. "I needed air," she said, her own voice sounding hollow and detached. "I couldn't stay there. Not after everything." His arms wrapped around her, strong and protective, but nothing could shield her from the reality of what had just happened. She was supposed to be celebrating her new life, dancing with her husband under glittering chandeliers. Instead, she was a spectacle of pity. Her father held her tightly, his embrace grounding her, but she could still feel the stares, the disapproval, the sympathy that felt more like condescension. It was suffocating. "I just want to leave," Sophia whispered, her words shaking. "I can't stay here." "Of course, sweetheart. We'll go. I'll have the car brought around immediately." But even as her father led her toward the exit, her mind kept circling back to Ethan. His kindness, his quiet understanding, the way he'd listened without trying to fix her pain or rush her to feel better. He'd simply been there. But there was no room for thoughts of Ethan in her current state. She needed to get away, to bury herself somewhere far from the cold reality that had ripped her dreams to shreds. The following days were a blur of unanswered calls, unopened messages, and a torrent of tears she could not stop. The world outside her bedroom remained distant and irrelevant. Her father had insisted she stay at his estate until she felt ready to face the world again. She appreciated his concern, but she couldn't escape the heaviness that pressed down on her chest like a relentless weight. Each night she stared at the ring Daniel had given her, still glinting with the promise it once held. The irony was painful. It was supposed to be a symbol of forever, but now it was nothing more than a painful reminder of how easily something that seemed so perfect could be torn apart. Days turned into weeks, and eventually Sophia found herself outside again, her feet guiding her toward the city's edge, where life thrived with unapologetic vibrancy. She wandered aimlessly, her heart still heavy, but her mind restless. The street vendors called out with enthusiasm, their voices mingling with the hum of traffic and the chatter of strangers. The scents of roasted chestnuts and freshly baked bread wafted through the air, momentarily distracting her from her despair. She found herself stopping at a quaint little cafe tucked between towering office buildings. The aroma of coffee and pastries was inviting, and the warmth of the place seeped into her bones as she walked inside. "Can I get you something?" asked the woman behind the counter, her smile genuine and bright. "Just a coffee," Sophia replied. "Black. Coming right up." She paid for her drink and took a seat by the window, her gaze drawn to the world beyond the glass. People hurried by, their lives moving forward while hers remained stagnant. "Sophia." The voice pulled her attention away from the street, and her eyes widened in surprise. Ethan stood before her, dressed casually in jeans and a simple shirt, his hair slightly tousled as if he'd been running his hands through it. "Ethan," she said, the name leaving her lips like an old song she hadn't realized she remembered. What are you doing here?" "I should be asking you the same thing," Ethan replied, his smile gentle but curious. "I didn't expect to see you around here. I just needed to get out, clear my head." Sophia glanced down at her coffee, her fingers tracing the rim of the cup. "It's been rough." "I can imagine," Ethan said, his tone carrying genuine sympathy. "Mind if I join you?" She gestured to the empty chair across from her, and he took a seat. For a moment, they sat in silence, the air between them heavy with words left unsaid. "I thought about you," Sophia admitted suddenly, her cheeks flushing at the confession. "That day, at the hotel, you were the only person who made me feel like I wasn't completely falling apart." Ethan looked surprised but pleased by her words. "I'm glad I could help, even if it was just by listening." "You did more than that," Sophia said, her gaze meeting his. "You were kind, and that's something I hadn't felt in a long time." "Kindness shouldn't be rare," Ethan replied. "But I guess it feels that way sometimes." Sophia smiled faintly, her fingers curling around her cup. "It's hard to find people who don't just see you as some image they want to project. Daniel always made me feel like I was supposed to be this perfect, polished version of myself. And I tried to be that person. I tried so hard that I lost sight of who I really was." "That's a hard way to live," Ethan said, his expression thoughtful. "Always trying to fit into someone else's idea of who you should be." Sophia nodded, her chest tightening. "The worst part is, I convinced myself it was love, that the sacrifices I was making were worth it. But looking back, I was just afraid of being alone." "There's nothing wrong with being afraid," Ethan said softly. "But staying in a situation that's wrong for you just because you're scared, that's no way to live." She let his words sink in, their truth both painful and liberating. "I don't even know who I am without Daniel," she admitted, her voice breaking. "My entire life was wrapped up in him, in our plans, in our future, and now I don't have anything." "Maybe you have more than you think," Ethan said, his gaze steady. "Maybe this is your chance to figure out who you are, not who he wanted you to be." Sophia stared at him, her eyes brimming with tears. But this time, they weren't tears of pain. They were something else, something closer to hope. "Why are you always saying the right things?" she asked, her lips trembling with the beginnings of a smile. "I'm just saying what I wish someone would have told me when I was lost," Ethan replied, his own smile gentle and genuine. There was something about him that made the world feel a little less heavy, and for the first time since her life had been turned upside down, Sophia wondered if maybe, just maybe, she could find her way back to herself. The days that followed were filled with cautious conversations and hesitant smiles. Sophia and Ethan began meeting more frequently at the little cafe, their encounters no longer the result of mere coincidence, but something far more intentional. Their talks ranged from lighthearted banter about the overpriced pastries at the cafe to deeper conversations about life's uncertainties and unfulfilled dreams. Sophia found herself opening up to Ethan in ways she had never allowed herself to with anyone else, not even Daniel. With Ethan, there was no pressure to be perfect, no expectations to meet. She could simply be herself. One afternoon, as they lingered over coffee and the remnants of a shared croissant, Sophia couldn't hold back her curiosity any longer. "What about you?" she asked, her gaze steady on his face. "You've listened to me ramble on about my life for days now, but you never talk about yourself." Ethan chuckled, rubbing the back of his neck in a way that suggested he was both amused and slightly uncomfortable. "I guess I've always been better at listening than talking." "Well, I'd like to hear your story," Sophia insisted, her voice gentle but firm. "You said you knew what it was like to feel lost. What did you mean by that?" Ethan's smile faded slightly, his eyes growing distant, as if he was sifting through memories too painful to easily share. For a moment, Sophia worried she had pushed him too far. But then he spoke. "I grew up in a rough neighborhood," he began, his voice measured and calm. "My parents didn't have much, but they did their best to make sure I had a decent childhood. When I was a kid, I used to dream about getting out, making something of myself, and giving them a better life." Sophia leaned forward, her attention locked on him. "What happened?" "I was good at school," Ethan continued, his fingers tracing absent patterns on the table. "Really good. Got a scholarship to a decent college, made my parents proud. But then, life happened. My dad got sick. Cancer. The kind that eats away at a person so slowly and cruelly that you can't even recognize them anymore. The sadness in his eyes was a living, breathing thing, and Sophia's heart clenched at the rawness of his words. I dropped out of college to take care of him, Ethan went on. It was the only thing that made sense. But even then, the medical bills piled up. We lost our house. And when my dad finally passed away, my mom was never the same. It was like she had lost the will to keep going. I'm so sorry, Sophia whispered, her voice thick with emotion. Ethan offered her a small, sad smile. I ended up taking whatever jobs I could find to keep us afloat. Waiting tables, fixing things around the hotel, anything that would help pay the bills. My dreams of making it big, they sort of fell by the wayside. But you didn't give up, Sophia said, admiration coloring her tone. You did what you had to do for the people you love. That's incredible. I don't know if it's incredible, Ethan replied, his gaze dropping to the table. But it's life, and you just keep going, even when it feels like you've been knocked down so many times that getting back up feels impossible. A silence settled over them, heavy and contemplative. Sophia couldn't stop thinking about how unfair the world could be, how it broke good people and left them with nothing but the courage to keep moving forward. But you didn't let it break you, Sophia said softly. You're still here. You're still trying. Yeah, Ethan admitted. I guess I am. They fell into a quiet companionship, their shared pain forming an unspoken bond. Sophia had never imagined finding comfort in the company of a man whose struggles were so different from her own, yet somehow, Ethan's presence made her feel less alone. Weeks slipped by, and their meetings at the cafe became routine, a lifeline Sophia hadn't known she needed. It wasn't just Ethan's kindness that drew her in, it was his resilience, his quiet strength, the way he spoke with conviction despite everything life had thrown at him. One chilly morning, Sophia entered the cafe to find Ethan already seated at their usual table, his hands wrapped around a steaming mug. But today, his expression was troubled, his brow furrowed with thoughts he couldn't seem to shake. Is everything okay? Sophia asked, sliding into the chair across from him. Ethan hesitated, his gaze dropping to the table before meeting hers. I've been offered a job, he said slowly. A real job. A position at a construction company that's willing to give me a shot. It's nothing glamorous, but it's a chance to rebuild my life. To start over. That's amazing, Sophia said, her smile genuine and bright. But her excitement was met with a flicker of uncertainty in Ethan's eyes. It's amazing, yeah, he agreed, his voice distant. But it's also far away. I'd have to move across the country. And I guess I'm just not sure if I'm ready to leave everything behind. Sophia's heart sank, the idea of losing him more painful than she wanted to admit. But she forced herself to push her own feelings aside. This wasn't about her. It was about Ethan finally getting the break he deserved. You have to take it, Sophia said firmly. You've spent so long putting everyone else before yourself. This is your chance to do something for you. Ethan looked at her, his expression unreadable. But what about us? The question caught her off guard, her breath hitching in her throat. They had danced around the subject of their growing connection, both of them too afraid to acknowledge it for what it truly was. But now, the words were there, hanging between them like a fragile thread. I don't know, she admitted, her voice trembling. I never expected to find someone like you. Someone who sees me for who I am, not who I'm supposed to be. But I can't ask you to stay. I wouldn't do that to you. I'm not sure I want to go, Ethan confessed. Not if it means losing you. Sophia's eyes welled with tears, her emotions tangled and raw. She didn't want him to leave, but she couldn't be the reason he sacrificed his own happiness. If it's meant to be, we'll find our way back to each other, Sophia said softly. But you have to take this chance, Ethan. You deserve it. He nodded slowly, his gaze never leaving hers. And in that moment, she knew their connection was something real, something neither of them could deny. Ethan's departure felt like a storm that had blown through Sophia's life, leaving her rattled and vulnerable. She had tried to be strong, telling herself that encouraging him to chase his dreams was the right thing to do. And it was. But that didn't make it hurt any less. The day Ethan boarded a plane to the other side of the country, Sophia had stood in her father's driveway, staring at her phone, willing herself not to call him and beg him to stay. It wasn't fair to Ethan. He needed this fresh start as much as she needed to rebuild herself. So, she had let him go. The weeks that followed were a blur of hollow routine and sleepless nights. Sophia threw herself into work, determined to prove that her life could be whole even without the man who had somehow become her closest friend. She took on new projects, expanded her portfolio, and networked like her life depended on it. All the while, her heart remained chained to the memories of those quiet mornings spent in the cafe, Ethan's laugh echoing in her mind like a song she couldn't shake. But loneliness had a way of creeping in, no matter how much noise and activity she surrounded herself with, and Ethan's absence was a silence she couldn't quite fill. One evening, after a particularly exhausting day of meetings and forced smiles, Sophia collapsed onto the couch in her small apartment. The place was neat, organized to perfection, yet it felt impossibly empty. Her eyes landed on the phone lying on the coffee table, taunting her with its silence. They had kept in touch through sporadic texts and occasional phone calls, but the distance between them was a constant reminder of how fragile their connection had become. Sophia hated it, hated the feeling of losing someone who had meant so much to her. A soft knock on her door startled her from her thoughts. It was late, and she wasn't expecting anyone. Cautiously, she approached the door, her pulse quickening. When she opened it, her breath caught in her throat. Ethan stood there, his hair tousled by the night breeze, his eyes searching hers with an intensity that made her knees feel weak. "Ethan," she whispered, her voice barely more than a breath. "What are you doing here?" "I couldn't stay away," he admitted, his expression raw and unguarded. "I thought I could move on, build a new life like everyone kept telling me to. But nothing felt right. Not without you." "But your job," Sophia stammered, her mind struggling to process what was happening. "You said this was your chance. Your fresh start." "It was," Ethan agreed. "And I took it. But every step I took forward only felt like I was moving further away from where I was supposed to be. I tried to convince myself that I was doing the right thing, but all I could think about was you. I couldn't let you go, Sophia. I just couldn't." Her eyes burned with tears, her heart racing with equal parts joy and disbelief. "But you left everything behind to come back here. What about your dreams?" "You are my dream," Ethan said simply, his voice breaking. "Or at least, being with you makes me want to dream again. I spent so many years surviving, fighting just to stay afloat. But when I met you, you made me feel alive. You made me believe that I could actually be happy. And I realize that whatever future I want to build, I want you to be part of it." Sophia stared at him, her chest tightening with emotions too powerful to name. For so long, she had believed that her happiness depended on following the perfect path, creating the ideal life society expected of her. But Ethan had shown her something else. He had shown her that happiness wasn't about perfection. It was about living genuinely, embracing the imperfect moments, and cherishing the beauty found within them. "Are you sure about this?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Because I can't go through losing you again." "I'm sure," Ethan replied, his gaze unwavering. "I left that job. I know it sounds reckless, but I had to follow my heart. And my heart is here, with you." Tears spilled down Sophia's cheeks, but this time they were tears of joy. Without thinking, she launched herself into Ethan's arms, her embrace fierce and desperate, as if letting go would mean losing him all over again. "I missed you so much," she choked out, her fingers curling into his shirt, as if anchoring herself to him. "I missed you too," Ethan whispered against her hair, his own voice thick with emotion. "Every single day." They stood there for what felt like an eternity, clinging to each other as if the world around them had ceased to exist. Sophia's heart raced. But for once, it was from sheer happiness rather than anxiety or fear. Eventually, they pulled apart just enough to look at each other, their faces inches apart. "What now?" Sophia asked, her smile uncertain but hopeful. "Now we build something real," Ethan replied. "Together." The simplicity of his words resonated deep within her, like a melody she hadn't realized she'd been waiting to hear. And for the first time in a long time, she allowed herself to believe that happiness was something she deserved. Their journey was far from over. They both had scars and fears to overcome, but they had each other, and that was a start. The weeks that followed Ethan's return were like a whirlwind of emotions and possibilities. Sophia couldn't remember feeling this alive. The simple moments felt richer, the laughter between them more genuine, the silences more comforting. And yet, the reality of what Ethan had done, giving up his one chance at a new beginning to return to her, weighed heavily on her mind. But Ethan seemed happier than ever. He took odd jobs around town, his relentless work ethic keeping him busy, but his smile never seemed to fade. The sparkle in his eyes whenever he saw her made Sophia's heart swell with gratitude and hope. One evening, as they sat on a bench overlooking the sparkling city lights, Ethan turned to her with an expression of seriousness that made her stomach twist with nerves. "I need to tell you something," he began, his voice steady but gentle. "Coming back here, it was the right choice. I don't regret it. But I can't keep doing odd jobs forever. I need to rebuild my life, and I want to do it the right way." "Of course," Sophia said quickly, her fingers lacing with his. "Whatever you need to do, I'll support you." Ethan's gaze softened, his smile breaking through his serious expression. "You always say the right thing, you know that." Sophia laughed, the sound light and unburdened. "I try." "I've been thinking," Ethan continued, "about starting my own business. Something small at first, maybe a construction and repair company. There's a lot of potential in this town, and I've got enough skills to make it work." Sophia's eyes widened with excitement. "Ethan, that's an amazing idea. You'd be incredible at that. You've always been good with your hands and—" She hesitated, her cheeks flushing. "I mean, you know what I mean." Ethan chuckled, his laughter deep and rich. "Yeah, I know what you mean. Do you have a plan?" Sophia asked eagerly, her curiosity sparking. "I do," Ethan replied. "I've been working on a business proposal. It's rough, but I think it's a good start. And I've been talking to a couple of guys I used to work with. They'd be willing to help me out if I can get the funding." Sophia felt her admiration for him grow even stronger. Ethan wasn't just dreaming. He was actively fighting for a future he could be proud of. "You're really doing this." "I am," Ethan said with a smile. "But I want you to be a part of it. I don't just mean cheering me on from the sidelines. I want us to build something together. A life. A future." Sophia's breath hitched. The sincerity in his eyes was almost overwhelming. Are you asking me to be your business partner?" "I'm asking you to be my everything," Ethan said softly. "But if you want to start with business partner, I'll take that too." Tears welled in Sophia's eyes, the magnitude of his words crashing over her like a tidal wave. "I don't even know what to say." "Say yes," Ethan replied simply. "Yes," Sophia whispered, her voice trembling with joy. "Yes, Ethan, I'm with you. Whatever it takes." The days that followed were a flurry of activity. Ethan threw himself into his business plans with a determination that left Sophia both impressed and inspired. She helped him wherever she could, offering advice on marketing and financial planning, drawing on her own experience and resources. Their relationship deepened with every passing day. They weren't just partners in business. They were partners in life. And even though the road ahead was anything but certain, they faced it together, their shared dreams fueling their resilience. It was during one of their late-night planning sessions, surrounded by paperwork and takeout containers, that Sophia's phone rang. The name flashing on the screen sent a chill through her veins. "Daniel." She stared at the screen, her hand frozen halfway to picking up the phone. The sight of his name stirred up 1,000 emotions. Anger, hurt, confusion. But she had moved on. She was rebuilding her life, and Ethan was a part of that new beginning. "Are you going to answer that?" Ethan asked gently, his gaze steady and understanding. Sophia took a deep breath, her fingers curling around the phone. "I have to. I need to know why he's calling." Ethan nodded. "Whatever it is, I'm here." With a mixture of dread and resolve, Sophia swiped to answer the call. "Hello?" "Sophia." Daniel's voice came through the line, tense and strained. "I know I'm the last person you want to hear from, but I need to see you. Please. It's important." Sophia's jaw tightened. "After everything you put me through, you really think I'm just going to drop everything to meet you?" "I know I messed up. I've spent months trying to figure out why I did what I did, and I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but this isn't about me. It's about you." "What are you talking about?" "I need to see you. It's about your parents' company. There's something you need to know." Confusion mixed with irritation. What could Daniel possibly have to say about her parents' company? And why now? "I'll give you 10 minutes, she said, her voice clipped. "Tomorrow at the cafe. After that, I don't want to hear from you again." "Thank you, Sophia. I'll be there." She ended the call, her hand shaking as she set the phone down. Ethan's eyes were on her, his concern evident. "Are you okay?" he asked. "I don't know," Sophia admitted. "Apparently, Daniel wants to talk to me about my parents' company. I have no idea what he's trying to pull, but I need to hear him out." "Whatever it is, you don't have to face it alone," Ethan said. "I'll be right there if you need me." His reassurance steadied her, his presence a calming force amidst the sudden chaos. "Thank you," Sophia whispered, her eyes locking with his. "For everything." "Always," Ethan replied, his hand reaching out to hold hers. But even as she squeezed his fingers, a sinking feeling began to grow in the pit of her stomach. Whatever Daniel was about to reveal, Sophia knew it had the power to change everything. And she wasn't sure she was ready for what lay ahead.